It's good to be here with the group, and thank you for the opportunity to share thoughts on what I think is just an incredibly important topic. Just a little bit more about me. I've been in this space a very long time, just over 25 years. And I got my start actually focused on HCM as a practitioner. So I out of university went into a rotational program in the banking industry in Chicago, of all places, where I got to be a recruiter. I got to be a learning and development professional. I did a stint in compensation. And I really kind of concluded that program by being an HR business partner. So I really got my start in HCM really through that lens of really performing the function. Transitioned, from being that practitioner really into the consulting space. Spent a bunch of years doing that, and was kind of drawn back to the function, really in HR technology. And it was the space in HR that I really just fell in love with, and have really been, kind of in HR technology ever since those days. I happen to live and work in Charlottesville, Virginia, which I know is a long way from the Bay Area. I actually am sitting at our corporate headquarters here today in Pleasanton, California. For those of you in the Bay Area, the sun did peek out here for a few minutes just a bit ago, but might be drifting away again. And I grew up in the Midwest, went to the University of Illinois. Huge Chicago Cubs fan. So if there's any Cubs fans in our audience here today, I'm excited about baseball starting in just the next couple of days. As I look at kind of some context for this discussion, I show you kind of Workday's HCM product portfolio, and it's the span of all of the products that I have the pleasure of leading an organization of people that focus on product strategy for. You can see a lot of things really represented here, and this footprint of products really has grown, pretty substantially over the last couple of years. And it's really that focus area and that lens that I bring to the table, today, that I want to offer context for some of the ideas that I'll share. And as I think about this topic, it begs that question, so what do you do when the economy heads south? I was reflecting the other day with some of my colleagues and what we call workmates, and we've really enjoyed, just this span of time, where we've been on this just upward trajectory. And technology itself has been, really the darling of the market. And there's been, a ton of spending in the space, whether it's corporate budgets, really investing in product, or even VC funding in the space, really dumping just a ton of money into technology. And we find ourselves at this interesting inflection point, right, where the game is changing before our eyes, and we have to think very differently about the way in which we approach our jobs, and whether it's being a product strategist, a product manager, leading a development function in this space. The game is changing before our very eyes, and we're being faced with challenges that some of us have not seen before. I think back in my career, whether it be 2008 or even before that, and fortunately having some experiences where, I got to navigate through some turbulent times. I'm thankful for having those experiences, but some of us haven't. Some of us who have only been in this game, even as many as 10 years, which might seem like a lot, have really experienced kind of the boom time, right? Really haven't had that chance to have to lead through some of the tough times. And I look back, and I look at some of the more challenging times. And there was a time where I was working for a financial services organization, and I joined that organization, and we were 25,000 people. And when I left that organization 4 short years later, we were 10,000 people less than that number. We were at about 15,000. And it was a really difficult time to manage through. And it's things like that I've reflected on as I thought about, this talk today, and just some ideas that I want to share. As we look at really the mindset I think we have to have, during challenging times like this, it's almost balancing two very competing priorities, right? And it's looking at, building product, putting products in the market and really managing that top line revenue growth. So how do we focus in on those things that are going to help us make money, right? How do we focus in on those things, that really drive growth? And on the flip side, what many of us are being asked, to do today is really look at the other side of the equation as well, and really, how do we manage cost? As Denise, you and I caught up, as we were planning this out, you said it's actually cool to manage cost again, right? It's one of those things that I think a lot of us, over time really haven't had to think about. And it ends up being, an element of this that I think is just super important as we look at the ways in which we're gonna manage our product portfolios. We're gonna think about product development. Managing costs becomes a key component of what that really looks like. So, a lot of challenge goes into this. I really look at it as competing priorities. Because lots of times in years past, and I definitely enjoyed it, over the last handful of years here at Workday, where, we're on just an amazing growth trajectory, and you got to throw a lot at problems. You got to throw a lot at, building new things, and, creating revenue streams, and growing the product footprint. And when times get tough, a lot of that starts to scale back, and you really got to look at the bottom line, and you need to look at ways in which, you can better manage in the environment you're in, and make better use of what you've got. So a couple of the ideas I'll share here today really gravitate towards that. If I double click into this category, and the ideas that I want to share, number one really is focusing on customer need. In times like these, I find buyers to get far more frugal. Price comes into the equation, much more prominently, and organizations become, far more hesitant to spend money. And I find that during, these times, really honing in on addressing customer need becomes a critical component of everything that we're doing, right? It's no longer, a luxury to really address fringe cases, and do the nice to haves. We really need to double down and really focus in on those key things, that customers really need. It's the things, that are durable, that they're going to end up, opening up the wallet and spending money on, that we need to focus on. Even looking at ways and considering opportunities to, offer lower priced options, or even introducing things like discounts, promotions, ways to incent that buying behavior, during these times, are some of those things that I find to be just absolutely critical to focus on. So really digging into need, looking at those things that are just mission critical, during times like this is really number one on my list. As we look at additional ideas and ways to, focus during these times, that second one really is looking at ways in which we can streamline product offerings. You saw my footprint of responsibility. That's a very broad footprint of capability to own and manage. And as we look at, kind of number one flowing into number two here, really, focusing in on those key product areas, that are really going to meet that customer need is critical. And making some conscious decisions during these times where, we scale back on even some of the things we're investing in, right? It could be, It could be areas of future innovation that, now is just not the time, right? To be putting dollars against that, and really, focusing in on, making more impact on fewer things becomes, an opportunity that we have to explore. I was working with my team here today, and we were digging in on one of our, kind of product categories, and the discussion that we were having is, how do we do two or three things really, really well, and focus our energies, in on those things and really move the needle on them. And then once we've made that progress, really look at ways in which we can expand, right? Move on to the next things. And really taking that mindset where, we're really going to make a bigger impact on less things, becomes the opportunity that we have to explore. And that's never easy, because we get asks all the time to, go far and wide. And when you spread yourself thin like that, you lose that opportunity to make a bigger impact on fewer things. So really looking at ways to streamline and focus on fewer things really is another key opportunity. The third one in my list might surprise some of you, but it is investing in R&D. While we're in times like these, I find that looking at ways in which, we can, look at innovation, really becomes a key opportunity. And it might seem a bit counterintuitive, but investing in research and development, really looking at ways in which we can help position, our organizations for future success, is an opportunity that we have during these times. And looking at ways in which, research and new product ideas, can help on that, grow the top line side of the equation, become something that we can look at, really looking at ways in which, we can test prototypes, identify emerging trends, in various industries, and looking at ways in which we can take advantage of this time, becomes a key idea to explore as well. The next one in the mix really is this idea of investing in partnerships. And it may be lost on some, who are really in that product management or development, role within product, where, we fall in love with designing and building, products. And it's really looking at that holistic way in which we can, look at the full complement of opportunities in which we can, bring capabilities to bear for customers, that we really have to consider. And it doesn't always have to be our stuff, that we bring to bear. It could be, our core capabilities plus some partner capabilities, that really create that well-rounded, solution, for a customer. So I always, as I work with my product strategists, one of the things that I, require as part of a core strategy for a product line really is, fully understanding that partner landscape, really understanding, at a very clear level how they fit into our overarching offering, and really defining out, to a very, very finite level, the impact that they're making, on our ability to deliver capability to our customers. I think, partnerships and having a very clear, vision and strategy for where they fit in, can really make or break a product line. So again, partnerships is that key way in which to do it. And it's almost a real opportunity to look at ways in which we can expand a customer base as well. Really, digging deep with partners, looking at ways, in which we can attract even customers that they've got, into the broader landscape of capability that we offer, really is just an excellent opportunity in times like these. The next one that I'll offer you is really this notion of communicating with customers. I find that during, tougher economic times, we can fall victim to a behavior pattern that can be very destructive during times like these, which is not saying a lot, right? Getting quiet, going insular. And now is really the time where, I truly think we need to buck that trend, and we need to get really creative in the way in which we make sure our customers have all the, the information at their fingertips. They know exactly what they're doing. They have a very clear perspective of our strategy, our roadmap, where we're going, the capabilities that we have today. We almost need to double down or triple down, on this idea of communicating and making sure that they have, all the information at their fingertips, making sure that, we're really educating, really offering that clear guidance, and being overt in how we're getting that information out there. It could be through newsletters, it could be through blogs, it could be through social media channels, direct communications, person to person through our Salesforce and customer success organizations. But really doubling down and tripling down here is a key opportunity during these times, because the clearer, you can be with that buyer, the more likely they are to, connect the needs they have to, what you're offering, and really take advantage of what you've got in your product offering. The last one I'll offer up today, and then Denise, I'm super eager to get to some Q&A and understand what's on the minds of our participants here today, really is this notion of measurement. During times like this, having a very clear understanding of our current metrics, can really aid in helping you make decisions on where you're at, where you go next, and how you move the needle. And understanding, sales numbers, understanding product usage numbers, understanding, maybe who's bought but not implemented, really is that secret sauce in my book of understanding and getting to a point where you can have an effective strategy, you can have an effective product roadmap, because knowledge is power. And the more that we measure, the more that we understand, our current analytics, really is, in my book, the number one thing that's going to help direct us to where we're going to go in the future. So measure ends up being the mantra, and having that firm command of the numbers, really will help you, with your leadership teams, with decision makers in your own organization, help you make that case and really drive forward on the product strategy, the product roadmap, and make sure that you're making good choices for your customers. So I'm gonna pause there. I do want to get into some Q&A. I know there's probably a lot of questions in the group, but I'll pause there. And Denise, I know you're monitoring things, so let's dive in.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, Neil, I mean, I think you shared so much, but maybe I'd love to even just start back to where you began, which was your own career progression. And you kind of talked about like your journey, and you mentioned that you were jumping back into consulting and then into HR. But like, how'd you make that leap into product strategy in particular? I think everybody would love to know. And I think there's a lot of people out here who either are looking to make that leap themselves, or even as product people, right? They want to build up their strategic thinking and their capabilities or skills that would make them, able to operate in a much more strategic way. And so would also just love to hear your advice for somebody who is looking to become a product strategist or kind of hone their strategic skills.
Yeah, I think my journey is somewhat unique. I shared already that I started as a practitioner. So I spent, I think, 5 or 6 years, really working in the discipline of HR. And I got the opportunity kind of at the conclusion, of that role, really to go into consulting. So I left, the banking industry. I went to go work for, what at the time was one of the big 5 consulting firms. I think that shrunk now to like the big 3 or maybe the big 2. I don't know where we're at. But I got that chance to go from being a practitioner to working with, lots of big organizations, on, human capital strategy, the way that they looked at, acquiring talent, growing talent. And it was just this really tremendous, opportunity to kind of go from, honing that focus on my own organization of people to working with lots of organizations on those topics. And I love that opportunity. It was really a great opportunity to, expand my thinking, look at problem sets differently, because not, every organization leverage the same practices in order to get things done. There was a whole variety of things that they did. I did that for a number of years, decided I wanted to get off the road, went back into a practitioner role, but at this time it was really looking at the notion of HR transformation and how do you shift from, a people heavy strategy where you were throwing, bodies at problems, and really looking at, the way in which we could transform HR, which was really using technology as that mechanism to, to solve problems. And it was probably one of the best opportunities I've ever had, where I really got to get deep into things and really looking at ways in which you could leverage a human capital management system, talent management systems, HR service delivery capabilities, really to offset the need to throw people at problems. And I just learned a ton. And I got the opportunity after that to kind of go back into consulting on that same topic, and again, work with lots of organizations in order to look at that challenge. And it was at that point in my career where, Oracle had acquired PeopleSoft, Dave Duffield, our founder, was starting Workday, and we were looking at this advent of cloud technology, software as a service, and getting really excited about it because what it could do for HR, and just went all in, right, on the idea of software as a service and the impacts that it could have, especially on human capital management. And from there, just kept getting closer and closer to this organization. And then 6 years ago, got the chance to come work here. First, really in the function of corporate strategy, looking at ways in which we could expand markets. And then 4 years ago, got the opportunity to come join the product team to do product strategy for them, and really kind of pioneering that function here at Workday. So, I mean, kind of happenstance how I got here, but I'm loving every minute of it. Really enjoying the opportunity to do this, and kind of been a bit of a journey to get here.
No, I mean, Neil, what I love about your story is it is like the classic example, like the best careers are never like this perfect line up and to the right. I think that's what we all think is going to happen when we graduate college. And then you're like, oh, and then the real world actually hits you.
It was kind of an accident. I don't know. That's how I got
right. But it's like you said yes to all these incredible like learning opportunities, right, along the way, I think, and kind of took these leaps. But I guess like I'm curious, like for the average product person, if I'm a product manager, sitting at a company and I say, I want to be Neil someday, like what are some of the things that you would recommend to like get some at bats to move in that direction more towards strategy?
You said it best, Denise, and it's never turned down a learning opportunity, right? I think back, I worked for a small consultancy, with somewhat of a maniacal CEO, that would make promises to our customers on our prospective customers, and walk me in the door on the first day of the engagement, set all kinds of lofty promises and then leave. right? And leave me with the job to figure out what to do with it. And it was tough. That was hard living. Those were never easy situations to be in. But I never said no, and I never said I can't do it. And I simply dug deep and figured out a way. And I look at the opportunity, I think, for a young, product manager, or, somebody kind of in the realm of product. And I think it's just really, taking on as many experience as you can, not shying away from them, learning as much as you can, and really kind of assembling, kind of a base of knowledge where you really can do amazing things with it, right? So whether it's, doing volunteer assignments, taking on gigs, doing a side hustle, there's a lot of ways in which you can build that inventory of knowledge and just build skills. And I look at gig platforms and just all these opportunities that are out there in order to build knowledge. I'd say never shy away from it, right? Always go the extra mile to take on more and learn more. There's ample opportunity out there today to do it.
I love it. You also are talking about one of my favorite values, like the value of being gritty.
Yeah.
So I love that. I'd love to switch gears and now talk about portfolio management, right? Because I think that's what many people, who came here today, came here to talk to, or to hear you talk about. And so you also mentioned, scaling back, right, in this market. And that's hard, right? Especially when we haven't been through it. We haven't had to make these like judicious decisions around what to cut, what to focus on. So maybe let's start first on the focus. Like, how did you, as you've talked to your team about these three things, like what were those guiding principles to say, let's prioritize this, like this is where we should focus? Like if somebody's looking at their portfolio products, how should they determine where they should be spending energy?
Yeah, it's never an easy conversation, right? Because I think we tend to get enamored with the cool stuff. We tend to get enamored with, the hot, innovative things. And sometimes your list of top three puts some of those cool things on hold, right? And it's the conversations that you have to say maybe not now, or not never, but not now. And for us, as we're making decisions around the way that we're going to apply, kind of a finite set of development capability in order to, continue to bring product to market. It really came down to two criteria for decision. The first was what do we think is going to delight our customers the most, right? And I think as you're making decisions on things in times like these, you got to put customers first, right? It's absolutely imperative, because they're the lifeblood of why we do what we do, right?
Yeah.
Secondarily, and this is, the capitalist in all of us, what do we think is going to drive growth the most? Where do we think we're going to be able to make money? And focusing in on that during, times like these is critical, because we're publicly traded organization. There's expectations of Wall Street and, shareholders, that we're gonna continue to be a growing organization. And if we're investing in things that aren't going to drive revenue, and are kind of more nice to haves, it doesn't help us achieve those goals, right? So we kind of put the 2x2 up on the board and said, if we're to plot our list of 20 things and we only get to focus in on three, what are the top couple that are going to really meet both of those criteria, and really leverage that as the way to drive decisions. So, I wish there was some, algorithm or, artificial intelligence, which would, prove me out that that's going to work. But lots of times it's gut and paying attention to the business case and looking at the forecasts, and going back to, the first thing I mentioned, which is, really paying close attention to customer need and understanding clearly, what they're asking for. and making sure that you're on it. So it's really for us, those two things. And, sometimes that's an easy dialogue and sometimes it's not, but you got to work through it.
Yeah, no, it's certainly, it's not an easy dialogue. I can imagine, as somebody who's having all those same discussions too, it's certainly not easy. I'm curious maybe also about the flip side. So that's going to drive, like, where do you focus? And you said, hey, for some of these other things, it doesn't mean never, but it may just mean not right now. But have you all made explicit decisions, to truly stop things? Because I think that is the really hard call to make too. And what would your advice be to other leaders who are sort of wrestling with that choice?
Yeah, that's never a fun one, right? Because once you get something started, it's really difficult to stop. And it takes a lot of grit. I love the word, the usage of that word, and it takes it takes courage in order to say we gotta stop this. We've gotta end work, and not say, what I think is the easy thing, which is what I said previously, not never, but not now. I think it's admitting not ever is a really difficult thing to do. We spent a lot of time really looking at our product roadmap, looking at those areas that we were investing in, and making some tough calls and saying, we got to stop this work. It's not going to pay off. It's not going to meet customer need. It's not going to drive, the growth of our organization and revenue. And it's a fool's errand at this point. We gotta just, cut it and be done. Never a fun process, but I think it's something that all organizations, need to go through, whether it's on an annual basis or, every couple of years, really evaluate, what's happening and just put an end to some of the work and redirect those critical resources to those projects and to those initiatives that are really going to move the needle for your customers and drive your bottom line.
Yeah, I kind of like what you're saying there too, which is like, I think we may think of it as a right now activity, given the shift in the market, but you said, hey, you should do this annually, or you should do this quarterly. It's like cleaning your room or going to the dentist. Nobody wants to do it, but it is a necessity.
And you'd be surprised. I mean, whether you're a small shop or a really big shop, things get spun up and people start, putting energy towards things. And, unless you go do the inventory and look around every once in a while, you might miss that it's happening. And we're, our leadership team here, we're often surprised at some of the things that, that are getting attention and getting energy. And it's like, well, how did that even happen in the first place? And nobody knows, right? And, there's, a couple teams of people working on moving something forward, and you're like, what are we, like, asleep at the switch here? How did that one even get to where it's at? And you got to ask the question, and you got to dig in and do the inventory. So it's an important process.
Yeah, it's great to hear you say that, because again, it's one of those things where people might think this doesn't happen to anybody else. This is just unique in my company, but it's happening everywhere.
It is happening everywhere. It's funny.
I've got a great question from one of our attendees who said, love the 6-point actionable framework to lead in a downturn. Question is like, how do you continue to lead and inspire your team? That's really the first question during this downturn. Everybody's being asked to do more with less in many ways. And so how do you provide that motivation, and what to do differently with other organizational stakeholders in a downturn? So you talked about like shifting, or maybe focusing on customers, but what about the internal folks?
Let's take the first part of that first. It's tough. I've got a big team. They're actually all assembled here in Pleasanton from all over the globe for the couple of day offsite this week. And we had to have some tough conversations as we were, looking at funding for this fiscal year, which started on Feb 1. And I had a lot of disappointed people on my team, because as we were, looking at funding for this fiscal year, we were more or less flat from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. There wasn't a lot of net new funding, flowing for new initiatives. And I had a lot of folks on the team say to me, oh, well, it looks like I need to change my strategy because I didn't get funding. And that's the exact wrong idea, right? My guidance to the team, and it's almost a bit of a dig deep. It's you have to remain vigilant that you have the right idea, you have the right strategy, it's the right thing to do, and you need to find that right time in order to go after it. And everything that I can look across our portfolio of things is going to have its time, right? And it's a lot of great ideas, a lot of great concepts, right for market, but maybe not right now. And it's maintaining that vigilance and believing in what you're doing is what you have to go after. And I've had a lot of pep talks and a lot of motivational speeches, around being vigilant and waiting for that right time to go after something. And I win some on that, and sometimes I'm not quite as inspiring as I think I am, but it's maintaining that vigilance. You just have to do it.
Yeah.
What was the second half of that?
The second one was, what would you do differently with other organizational stakeholders during this downturn?
To me, it's about alignment, right? And looking at, I have a whole lot of fun, living in a, product and development organization, but, we have a sales organization, we have a marketing organization, we have a customer success organization. And if we're all doing different things or working with our customers in different ways, we're wasting time. We're wasting a lot of energy that really, could be applied, to other things. So, taking that opportunity, especially during this time, to have the conversation, drive the alignment, making sure that we're all, kind of going in a common direction, I think it's even more important than times of, boom and high growth. Because right now we don't have the luxury of wasting cycles. We don't have the luxury of, squandering investment dollars. We don't have the luxury of wasting our customers' time. No one's going to give you the time of day if you're wasting their time. So knowing that we're focused on common goals, knowing that we're focused on, achieving, the same things becomes even more critical. So taking that time to have the alignment discussions, make sure that we're all clear on what it is we're doing and where we're going, I think becomes even more important. So alignment's the key.
I cannot agree with you more. I think one thing that we've even kind of come to do is to say very explicitly, what are we not doing?
Mm-hmm.
And like even more clear and document those things to say what's off the table to just help drive that alignment. So I love the alignment as a focus.
Yeah.
Follow-up question from our community here back to, this idea though, that you mentioned before of like, staying vigilant on your strategy. There is this idea of like, yes, your strategy may remain unchanged, or you want to achieve the same goals over time, but in this market, like, do we need to adapt? And maybe there's a bit of a surprise that like adaptability isn't highlighted. And I guess I personally think about this and wonder about this when you talk about partners and where partners can plug in.
Yeah, adaptability is key. I mean, it's one of our taglines right here at Workday. It's helping, HR be adaptable and pivot with, wildly changing times. When I was talking about being, vigilant with the strategy, we've got a handful of things here that we know are winners, right? And it's just a matter of, having it have its moment and be on the table for investment and go. But there's a whole list of things, where we've got current products in market, we've got, things that were, 2/3 of the way of, maturing a product capability. And you can't take your eye off, its impact on the market and ways in which you may need to pivot, those features or those capabilities in order to have even more impact.
Mhm.
And we've got an example right now, where we've got a mature product, that we have a large percentage of our customers using. Let's call it a third, and there's another 2/3 of our customer base that doesn't get it. They don't get the impact that it could have on their organization. And we've kind of kicked around, the notion of why, and it comes down to the way we named it, right?
Wow.
And the way people perceive the product based on the way in which we talk about it. And then you really kind of unpack it. You're like, well, no, this is really designed to do exactly what all these people are asking us to do. And they don't think we do it because of the way we name the product.
Wow.
So if you look at this notion of, adaptability, you got to be paying attention to those things and be willing to pivot and move in order to help, educate, uncover that opportunity and get people to see the opportunity that they have with capability that is mature today, right? So I love that point on adaptability, and yeah, it fits into this equation completely, for sure.
And do you, maybe to the portion that I was even interested in or curious about, like, do you see that piece of adaptability? Like, is that one of the places maybe where you plug a partner in? And if not, like, where are some of the other places where you might recommend somebody lean on a partner during this time? And what I'm thinking about is, hey, maybe we'd love to potentially build this in-house, but if it's not something that you have like really strong commitment on, but it is a need for your customers, like, is that a place where you all have plugged in partners that opportunity when you can't make the investment? And if not, like, what's your guidance on where somebody might plug a partner in?
Yeah, I think you're saying it really clear. And it's, if you can't fill a gap area, you can't fill a need area, you don't have the investment dollars to do it. And even if you want to, kind of leaning on, others in the space that can close that gap, fill that need area is imperative. I showed our product footprint slide, at the beginning of the webinar, and it's expansive. But the funny thing about it is we've still got over 250 partners in our ecosystem that are filling needs that we can't provide our customers, right? I mean, we're big. We've got a lot of coverage today, but we still have this large list of partners that we leverage. And I look at partners really with open arms, because there's lots of ways, to drive excitement by coming together. There's lots of ways in which, partners can become more than partners over time, right? Because you do find that fit, you find that better together story, and you might want to do an acquisition. And just really looking at ways in which you can provide that seamless opportunity to your customers becomes key.
Yeah, it's sort of this opportunity. If you stick with that analogy of like, you date a little bit before you decide to get married, and so maybe this is helping in some cases to force us to date a little bit before we really commit to that being fully part of the product that we're going to own forever and ever more.
Yeah, I've had a pretty successful track record here, of doing acquisitions, and in the handful of cases where we did make the move and we did, eventually do a transaction, they were organizations that had been in our partner program for a number of years, right? And it's, kind of seeing early, like, hey, I think there's a lot of opportunity here. Let's get you in our partner program. Let's start to get close. Let's really start to build out, on those use cases where we think this is that fit and better together. Let's do the integrations. And it proves it out really, really clearly. And you can really see some of those better together, moments, and senior leadership, executive leadership, is more prone, to pull the trigger and write the check and spend the money when you've got really clear proof points, right? So partnerships can be that key way, in order to blaze that trail and create those opportunities and expand, via, inorganic investment.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Maybe a couple more questions. I know we're coming up on time. One here again from our community. How can we make sure that product managers provide more value during these uncertain times, right? The big aspirational products get discontinued when something is unstable. And, ultimately like PMs, need typically their team and other teams ultimately to be successful. And so I guess maybe taking a step back from the individual questions, it's if I've got to think about my ability to impact the organization as a product manager, how can I provide the most value during this time to really complement sort of the strategy work that a team like yours is doing?
I look at the last, topic that I offered up on measurement. I think knowing the data, knowing the numbers is the number one thing, right? If you're well-versed in, all the attributes about what you're doing and you can speak, intelligently to it with confidence, you're going to offer your organization a lot of value, right? Because you're going to provide that guidance, you're going to provide, that confidence that you've got it right, it cold, and you know what you're doing, right? So, if you're a product manager, dig in on the data, make sure all attributes of what you're doing, whether it be sales, usage, performance. I mean, the list is deep. I mean, really dig in on the numbers and have a calm command of that and be confident about it, and you're gonna make a huge impact.
Yeah, I think the other thing that you actually mentioned that I would highlight here too is the customer, right?
For sure.
Like I always say, the person who holds the keys to the kingdom is the person who knows the customer the best. And so maybe, and you mentioned like a bunch of different like communication channels that you all have been using. Like, what's your best advice? Like, what are your tips and tricks if somebody here, let's say, is at a startup and maybe they don't have all of these existing channels and customer programs established? Like, what are your biggest winners? Where would you recommend that they invest, kind of given they might have limited resources?
I always lean on one. Maybe I'm a one-trick pony, but we started an advisory council years ago here at Workday. And it's a very esteemed, kind of group of people to be a part of. And I lean on that group, with high frequency, right? And it's developing relationships with that group of people where I can pick up the phone and I can ask a tough question, right? And they'll be honest and open with me in their response. That type of thing I just think goes a long way, right? When you've got a group of customers where you've developed that type of relationship where, you can ask the hard questions, you can dig in on gritty topics that you might not want to ask, the general population. That type of thing can go a long way. So, you've got a group of customers, I'm certain, that are going to be willing to raise their hand and participate in something like that. And you can put some kind of specialness around it that allows them to feel good about that investment of time. And I think you can go a very long way.
Yeah, I would echo your sentiment as well. I mean, I felt like when I was at Workday, greatest customers, right? Like always wanted to lean in, always wanted to participate. And I think every other company, I think this has been, your customer advisory board, your user group, whatever it is, like, has a powerful group.
Yeah. I mean, we've developed such a relationship with our advisory council. I picked up the phone, last fall, called 3 of them and said, how much of your budget are you spending on us? Mm-hmm. And they answered the question honestly. Like, that blew my mind that they were willing to do that, right? And it's all about building that trusted relationship and digging in, and it can go a long way.
I have one last question for you, unless any final ones come in, which is sort of related to that. You mentioned that when you're talking about the things that are winners that you want to invest in are the things that the customers not only will delight the customers, but they're willing to open up their wallet for them. And so maybe it's these trusted advisors that you've developed. Maybe there's other ways that you've developed doing this at scale. Again, if somebody hasn't gone through that exercise, how do you determine, will the customer really open up their wallet, or is it just something that they might like to have, but are unwilling to pay for?
I look at that largely through two lenses. One, are they spending money on it somewhere else today, and can we deliver it in a way that makes it better and they want to use it from us? That's kind of one path. And then the other path is the pain so great in the way in which they're trying to accomplish that stuff today that it's worth spending money in order to get the pain to go away? So it's that threshold. Like, is it super painful? Are they going to be willing to make that pain go away? And can we build a better mousetrap that would make them want to spend it with us? And it's generally those two things. So yeah, good question.
Yeah, and I think that takes you back to the road of the customer, right? Like knowing the customer, knowing their pain, having those conversations like the ones you mentioned to say, how much are you spending? Where are you spending it? And sounds like what I think you're also saying there too is kind of like taking a jobs to be done approach. Doesn't mean they have to be spending it on the exact same thing with a competitor. Could be that they're doing it with spreadsheets. I like to say duct tape and glue, any one of these things.
Yeah, spot on. Totally agree with
you. Amazing. Well, Neil, from all of us in the product community and from Products That Count, a huge thank you for your time today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And
it's good to see you.
I love it. It's great to see you too. And I took away some nuggets for myself. So I'll be putting your advice to work, as will the community.
Awesome. Denise, thank you so much for having me. Thanks to the Products That Count group for having both of us today. This was a good time. I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, me too. Take care.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.